ตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนามัสสามิ Good evening or good morning, depending on where you are. We've come together to listen to the Dhamma and practice together for another time, another occasion. Again, depending on where you are in the world, you might be experiencing slightly different situations. Like some parts of the world are going into lockdown at the moment with the spread of coronavirus. If you're living in Melbourne, where we live, then you're experiencing coming out of lockdown as the spread of the virus subsides. And you can see with the coming out of lockdown, people who for many months have been almost feeling trapped in their homes, unable to move around very far, very often, and living together with the stresses of that. There's a certain sense of euphoria and relaxation as they are able to move around more freely now and do more activities and meet people that they haven't met for a while and so on. And it seems to me it's a little bit like when you finish a session of meditation. Just now we were practicing mindfulness of breathing. And when you practice mindfulness in this way, and you're either sitting or practicing mindful walking, you're keeping your mind on an object and putting your effort into that, bringing up mindfulness, clear comprehension, practicing letting go of distractions, distracting thoughts, feelings, not paying attention to sounds and sensations in your body. So you're becoming more disciplined, more focused, paying more attention to your breath in particular, and your mind, your state of mind in the present moment. But then when you finish a session of meditation like that, the tendency is to relax because you've been putting forth a lot of mental effort to bring your mind to pay attention to the object. And then you relax and allow it to think whatever it wants, do whatever it wants, go here, go there. So it's almost like every time you finish meditation, you're coming out of lockdown. So in that sense, coming out of government lockdown based on the coronavirus pandemic, if you're a meditator, shouldn't be such an unusual experience maybe, because you already know what it's like. You've been in this situation maybe hundreds of times before if you've practiced meditation regularly, where you've been focusing your mind in a very direct, disciplined way for a period of time, but then having finished your formal meditation, the tendency or the habit is to let the mind go, and you might even say not continue the practice, or certainly not continue it on the same level, which is probably why our teacher Luang Por Chah used to say, it's one thing to train the mind in mindfulness and develop states of calm, stillness, samadhi, but it's another thing to maintain those states of calm, stillness and samadhi, because that takes equal or even greater effort. Because you'll notice, like coming out of lockdown, when you come out of a period of meditation and you start to do other activities which may be fairly mundane or normal, your mind starts to wander and indulge in some of the thoughts and moods that previously perhaps you had managed to let go of, or become more aware of and understand better during the meditation. Now maybe the tendency is to just relax to the point where whatever's going to come up in your mind, you just let it flow in. And as you engage in more activities, meeting people, doing things, more reactions come up as well. And often people find that very quickly they're overwhelmed by all the sense impressions, the change in focus, moving their mind to consider doing different activities, talking to people, doing things, coming here, going there. And very quickly the samadhi is lost. So that's one part of our practice, is learning how to maintain a continuity of effort in our daily life, in our practice. Because partly one of the obstacles in our practice is this sense that meditation is something you do on a retreat or in a temple, monastery, or in your home, but just once a day or twice a day in a formal way, and then the rest of the time, nothing. Just get on with life, and the meditation doesn't seem to be so relevant. Most of us have had that experience. So we're learning how to expand our understanding of meditation to see, well, we're really working with this mind, our own mind, body and mind, day by day, and every part of the day is part of the practice. Every part of life becomes part of the practice. That's our aim. Of course, to maintain mindfulness and awareness and wisdom in different situations is challenging. And that's why we're still suffering, that's why we're not yet enlightened. But that is the challenge we have to take up, and learning how to make everything part of the practice and, as I said, expand the kind of qualities we're developing in meditation to be looking into bringing them up throughout our day, throughout every situation, from the first breath when we wake up in the morning through to the last breath at night when we fall asleep. Everything becomes part of the practice. And you might make one of your goals in your life and in your practice is to see whether you can be mindful in every situation, or at least be putting the effort into bringing up mindfulness and the kind of qualities we're developing in meditation in any situation at any time. However distracting, challenging, however difficult, we're always aiming to do that, because really meditation is the heart of what we call the Eightfold Noble Path, those 8 factors which we sometimes talk as sila, samadhi, panya, morality, calm, concentration, and then wisdom. We're developing this path all the time. And our meditation is the most intense way that we're doing that. But these qualities we're developing over and over again through our life, because our mind and body goes with us wherever we are. And the opportunity to cultivate the path is always there. Similarly, the opportunity to lose our way, lose sight of the path, and get entangled in the world and end up with more stress, more suffering is also there all the time. We have to be on our guard and alert, and have that understanding that everything is part of our practice. There's nothing that isn't. It's a bit like when we go to work. If you have a job and you go to work, then there's you can't help but think, well, there's the time I give to my job, and then there's my time. You come home in the evening, say, or even if you've been working from home, there's the time you give to the company or whatever that job, that way of earning your living, whatever's involved in that. You're giving time, effort, energy to that, and then there's your time. And there's always this sort of sense of my time and their time. Even in our personal or family life, social life, it can be the same, can't it? It's my time, and then the time I give to my partner or my family or my kids or my friends, their time. And we're always getting caught into this way of thinking. Time for meditation, a time when we're not meditating, time for work, time for my own personal time, leisure, time for the family, time for me, time for her, time for me, time for him, time for me. We tend to think like this out of our habit, and part of that is this sort of sense of self we've built up, invested in since we've been born. And sometimes we can't help but think, when I get time to myself, somehow I'm going to be better off, happier. So even in meditation, it can be like that. When you practice meditation, maybe even you think, I'm giving this time when I meditate to the Buddha or to my teacher or to somebody, and then there's my time when I'm not actually meditating and I can forget about all that. And maybe we even see meditation as some kind of extra burden in our life. That, so if you come here to this monastery, me or one of the other monks maybe has told you to try and do more meditation, and then it's like, oh, the monk has given me this extra burden in my life that I have to do my meditation. And then when you've finished your meditation, you walk away from your cushion. It's like, now I can leave the burden behind and do whatever I want. So even meditation becomes a burden, an extra thing you have to do in a very busy life, one more extra thing. And we have to be careful to observe those attitudes as they're coming up, because they will perhaps undermine some of the effort we put into our practice. Not just into meditation, but on the level of the practice of generosity. It can be much the same. I practice generosity for them, but now I'm going to be generous for me, my time, their time again. Or even precepts, keeping precepts and developing morality and a sense of living in a harmless, skillful way can still be that sense of us and them. So it's like sometimes people, you see, they come to the monastery and they're on their best behavior and they're trying to keep the precepts, be very mindful of what they say, what they do, be helpful, be kind, caring, which is great, which is good. But then they leave the monastery or they leave the meditation center, go home, and maybe it's, well, I don't need to keep the precepts anymore. No one's around, no one's seeing me, no one cares. And so we let go of some of our effort, perhaps in a situation, or when we're on our own, as Ajahn Chah used to say, when you're on your own, sometimes you think, oh, no one's here, no one will see what I'm doing. And maybe when an unwholesome state of mind comes up, we're a little bit greedy, or we're a bit angry, we may do something behind other people's backs, steal something or take something that's not really ours, or do something negative towards another person. We can say or write something against somebody else because nobody sees, nobody knows, or we can even damage their property or do something and neglect something that we should really do, a responsibility that we should really be doing, but we neglect it because we think nobody will see, nobody will care, nobody will know. But the thing is, we know, because our mind and body is always there in every situation, every part of our day. So if our mind does fall under these different kind of more unskillful negative emotions, negative mind states, whether it's to do with being more selfish or actually consciously harming others or disrespecting others in different ways, we're always there, we're always present, whether other people are present or not, we're always there. We'll have to bear the consequences, at least on the level of our memory. We'll remember what we've said and done. If we're not mindful, you may be keeping the precepts, I hope you are, but you may still have moments where you're not mindful, but we're right there. When we're not mindful, we're there, and we have to suffer the consequences, whether other people are involved or not. So in every situation, there's always at least one person present, us. So the place of practice is there every time we practice, every time we're doing anything from the beginning of our day through to the end of the day. It's part of the practice because we're always there. And if we are neglectful or distracted, heedless in our day, in our life, then it will come back on us. And the very point of our practice is to develop the path, the Eightfold Noble Path, that will lead us to reduce and ultimately end all stress and all suffering from our experience, from our life. That's our goal. So our attitude to the practice and becoming aware of seeing how we have this sort of sense of meditation time and then end of meditation, or my work and then their work and then my time and their time, all these kind of different ways we have of looking at our life and the way we're doing things. We should be investigating them a bit because they have an impact on our practice, and try to open up a bit and see everything I do is part of the practice, so everything is meaningful, everything is important. There's no such thing as a time in our day or in our life that doesn't matter. It all matters because we're constantly creating karma through body, speech and mind. We're constantly conditioning our mind through what we do, what we say, what we think. And there's no escape from that. This is a realization that you get. The more you practice, the more you realize that, it's important to look after this mind and treat it well, value it, and do the right things by it. This is what the Buddha encouraged us to do with our lives as human beings, is to really value them and see this is an incredible opportunity to learn and improve ourselves and experience more peace through that understanding we get from improving this mind, training it in the path. Another way you could look at it is that we practice, and we might as well practice because the causes of suffering are there in our wrong thinking, wrong views, wrong attachments that we've built up. And they're not just going to disappear or go away. They're always there until we address them. They're always going to be causing us suffering. So you might as well do the job now rather than continue to suffer and put it off for next life, or next week, next life. If you appreciate this point, then you realize however difficult or challenging practice is, and we know how difficult it can be in different situations, it's worth putting the effort in, it's worth giving it a go, because you're only putting it off. If you like some people say, I'm going to practice when the next Buddha comes. If you believe in rebirth, past life, future life, many people build up these excuses in their mind, and they're saying, this practice is difficult, this mind is difficult to train, meditation, I find it so hard because my mind is wandering all over the place and it's full of moods, views and opinions, or it's too sleepy. It's so difficult to do this practice, I think I'll just leave it for other people, and I'm going to do it when the next Buddha comes along. Because we've read the suttas and the stories about the time of last Buddha, Gautama the Buddha, and how people just sat down, heard one talk from the Buddha and became enlightened there and then, and that sounds good. So, so I'm going to wait for the next Buddha and do it that way. When Maitreya Buddha, who they say is the Buddha with all-pervading kindness and compassion, sounds like the best kind of Buddha you could hope for. When he comes along, then I'm going to become a disciple, meditate, and I'm really going to do it. But if we're honest and we look at that attitude, we probably have to admit there's some selfishness and some it's just making excuses, isn't it? We're trying to put it off, perhaps because we've had some awareness of how difficult the practice can be. It's like putting it off, make the excuses, and just taking a back seat, taking it easy, you might say, for this life, because we practiced a little bit and then bounced back because we saw, this mind is difficult to train. But who knows when the Maitreya Buddha will be here and where we'll be. Maybe we won't even meet him or catch him, and we'll be born somewhere else and miss him, miss the boat. We really don't know. Thinking about some distant time in the future, it's a bit unreliable, not a very good starting point for a practice. So the place of the practice and the time is right here, right now. It's always the case. So in that sense, it's easy in the sense we just have to learn to practice with what's coming up in our mind right now, right here. Literally, as you're listening to this talk, whatever's going on in your mind, whatever moods are coming up, however you feel, if you have some painful feelings, you feel relaxed, pleasant, you feel sleepy, tired, you feel alert, energized, you feel happy, you feel depressed, whatever is going on right now is the place of practice. And we might as well address it now rather than putting it off for some future life. Start improving things right here, right now, and bringing up mindfulness and the other qualities of the path that we're developing is what we're aiming to do. So not only learning to develop mindfulness through meditation, but also to preserve and maintain the mindfulness and the wisdom and insight that we gain from the meditation when we finish. So you're seeing that meditation is really all of life, not just a part of life. Again, what many Buddhists find is that they have this sort of unconscious, or sometimes it's a very conscious view, that meditation is something done by monastics, monks and nuns in monasteries, in those kind of places, or perhaps lay people on retreat. That's something people do in those places at those times. Other people, not me. We often have that view. But really, the qualities that you're developing in your Buddhist practice, meditation, and the whole practice, the whole path, Sila, Samadhi, Panya, they apply to all of us because all of us are exposed to stress, suffering, all the different kinds of mental suffering that human beings can have. We're all exposed to it. We all have to go through it, deal with it. So it's relevant to all of us. It's not just something for monks and nuns in the monasteries, in the forests, in the caves, on the retreats. It's for human beings, young and old, whether you're a child, or you're middle-aged, or you're old-aged, whether you're sick, whether you're healthy, whether you're rich, you're poor. The Dhamma applies to all of us, wherever we go. And this is one of the messages the Buddha was encouraging, and you see one of the amazing things that the Buddha managed to achieve was to get the idea across that the Dhamma is relevant and to be practiced by everyone in society. It's available for everyone. It's not something you can force people to do. All you can do is encourage them to open their eyes, to look, to see for themselves. But the Buddha was so good at doing that in his teachings. His message was so clear. His own mind was so well developed. His compassion was so well developed, and his wisdom was so clear. He did it very well. And if you're aware of, say, India and the social situation in India, particularly in the time of the Buddha, it was a caste system. Society was divided into different castes, the Brahmins, the warriors, the merchants, the untouchables, the different castes. And the belief was that you're born into your caste and that's it. It's fixed destiny, no way out. You're stuck. Whatever caste you're born into, you have to accept that. And you're not going to be able to move out of that caste into another caste. So that sort of sense of fixed destiny was very prevalent. But the Buddha managed to encourage people to open up and look at their life, and particularly social conventions, society, the way it was run, the belief systems, from different angles, and to see that it's not as simple as just you're born into one caste or one life situation and that's it, fixed, no other possibilities are there. The Buddha was teaching us to see that when we do start training in the Eightfold Noble Path, Sila, Samadhi, Panya, developing mindfulness, developing insight through wise reflection, you can see beyond some of these social conventions such as caste. And nowadays, say in countries other than India, you might not find that same caste system replicated, but you'll see the same sort of social dynamics. So we have attachment to all kinds of social conventions like rich, poor, or politics. The news is full of politics often. Your political leanings to the right, to the left, to the centre, up, down. Politics is one thing that can be a bit like caste. That the Buddha's teachings transcend, because whether you're on the right, you're on the left, you're still a human being with a body, a mind. Your mind is sensitive. You have a body that feels pleasure, feels pain. You have a mind that can be mindful or be lost and not have mindfulness. You can have a mind that is lost in greed or anger, delusion, or you can have a mind of non-greed, non-anger, non-delusion. And understanding these truths and practicing in line with them is open to everyone, irrespective of caste, political leanings, race, ethnic background, cultural background. It cuts through all of that. The wisdom of the Buddha cuts through everything. It's like we say, like the sharpest kind of knife ever known to man, or to humankind. It's like it cuts through the delusions that we tend to cling to, our attachments to views and opinions and social conventions and so on. Cuts through all that, and it would have to, because the Buddha was aiming for liberating wisdom, liberating us as human beings from our delusions that kind of bind us to stress, suffering. So it would have to cut through everything, whether it's the caste system or political beliefs or ethnic background, all these things that tend to divide humans and lead to a lot of conflict and unhappiness between people. And the Buddha also, he often reminded people he's a human being, he's an extraordinary human being, but he's still a human being with a human body, a human mind, the same raw materials as us, no different. He was born, he had a mother and a father, he was born, he ate food, drank water, breathed air just like us. He was brought up, maybe not like us, he was brought up in a wealthy family, the ruling class of the day in India. But in a sense, that's quite a good lesson to reflect on over and over again, because it always seems relevant, because our society nowadays is much the same as the time of the Buddha. We generally, as a society, we're seeking happiness through material success, economic development, the development of science, technology, medical research, and so on, to deal with all the problems of life, which is fair enough. But we tend to stop there and just feel if we develop every kind of material thing in this world, every product, every service we can produce to make people happy, comfortable, convenient, make things go well in society, in the world, then we'll be successful, we'll have reached our goal. But the Buddha went beyond that, and he said, no, that's not enough. Material success is important on a level. We all have to eat, we have to have a place to sleep, but it's not an end in itself. It's merely a cause for us, a causal condition for us to be able to practice more effectively so that we can train the mind to go beyond these things. And this is what the Buddha himself, from his own life, understood very well, because he was brought up in the palace, surrounded by wealth, and because of his father's love for his son, was still, you might say, not perfect love. His father wanted his own son, to follow in his footsteps and become the next ruler of that part of India, to be good, become good at governing, administration, leadership, which I know, those kind of goals are not that different from today. His father wanted that for him. His father didn't want him to become a spiritual leader, even though in India, in those days, and to this day, India is a place that values spiritual leaders, religious leaders, monks, nuns, spiritual practitioners. They're valued, they're seen as somebody important in society in India, maybe less so in other countries around the world. But even so, his father wasn't satisfied to have his son become a spiritual leader, so he did everything he could to stop that happening, out of his own love, attachment for what he saw as the best for his son. So, he gave him every comfort, best food, best clothes, got him the best friends, the best education, the best training in the arts and the crafts, the warcraft and everything. Best entertainments, so you had the best girl bands. These days, there's lots of girl bands in the world. In those days, the Buddha had the best girl bands because he's a boy, and the father wanted him to be totally surrounded by sensuality. So best food, best girls, best entertainments, everything was best that money could buy, in order to stop him seeking out any kind of higher happiness. So his father was saying to him, this is good enough, this is the best we have, this is what you should aspire to. Which isn't that much different from us these days, living in Australia, Singapore, UK, America, wherever you are in the world. Our society and culture tends to be pushing us towards this sense of just seeing material and sensual progress, as it were, as the best, as what we aspire to, what will satisfy us, and not pushing us towards maybe a higher spiritual happiness coming from developing the Eightfold Path, Sila, Samadhi, Panya. So the Buddha's father in the story of the life of the Buddha is really representing everybody in the world, in the world today. And we all, again, looking for excuses not to have to push ourselves in the practice. We tend to say, oh, it's good enough, I've got this much income, this much wealth, food, clothing, place, accommodation, I can travel a bit, I can spend some money on some luxuries and entertainments. Good enough. And our mind sort of tends to take that view, it's good enough, and not want to go further. But the Buddha, one of the defining qualities of the Buddha's teachings is that the happiness you can achieve as a human being, it is happiness, it is genuine happiness of having good food, good accommodation, peace, security, the sort of ordinary things we aspire to. It's good, but it's not good enough. And the Buddha was constantly reminding people you have to aspire to the higher goals if you really want to free yourself from stress and from suffering. So for many people, that journey really starts when they have a sort of a shock, a wake-up call. Because sensuality, sensual comfort, material comfort, and the sort of experiences we can easily find as human beings, that we are easily finding as human beings these days, they tend to make us a bit dull and complacent with our life. If you have got enough good food, good friends, access to girl bands, boy bands, whatever it is you like, well, your mind might feel that's enough. I don't need to do anything more than this. Why do I need to sit meditation and put my body and mind through the troubles of disciplining itself, learning to sit with a bit of pain, learning to sit with a restless mind? Why do I need to do that? I've got enough to eat. I've got my computer, my phone. I've got money in my pocket. Why do I need to do that? But take your practice a bit further. Be willing to investigate these very attitudes you're holding. Are they really the best you can do as a human being? Are they really in your best interest? As human beings, we're still suffering and stressed. One of the biggest stresses we have is when we don't get what we want. If we're not recognizing that dynamic in the mind, you're not getting what you want, you suffer. You get upset, restless, agitated, not getting what you want. And what proves that? Well, lockdown proves that, doesn't it? Suddenly you don't get what you want. You can't travel overseas or even out of your neighborhood. In Melbourne, they wouldn't let you travel more than 5 kilometers. As a monk, that's all right. You can just walk up and down on your walking path for 5 kilometers easily, back and forth, back and forth. You don't need to go 5 kilometers in one direction. But for most people, that's already a limit because we got so used to the comfort of cars, trains, aeroplanes, travel that 5 kilometers seems like impossible. It's such pressure on us not to be able to step outside the boundary of 5 kilometers without getting fined or checked by the police. If you want to go further, you need a permit, a written permit by your employer or something. Somebody needs to give you a permit. That's putting a lot of pressure on us. We're not getting what we want. We want to go shopping, visit our friends, go into the countryside, whatever, and we can't. So lockdown has exposed something there, hasn't it? It's like that shock that the Buddha said. Sometimes we need a bit of a shock, a wake-up call. It's like, oh yeah, I'm so attached to travel, freedom, socializing, or even just work. Work is not so convenient when you can't move around, or where you can't sit and have a meeting in face-to-face with someone. You can only do it online, on Zoom, say. Teaching Dhamma, they're the same, right? It's okay that we've got Zoom and other media platforms, that's good, but it's still not as good as doing it in person, isn't it? You see more, you notice more when you're in person with the Dhamma, just as anything else. So the pandemic as a whole and our response to it, lockdown, restrictions, difficulties encountered, not just the illness itself, but also the social restrictions around it. In one sense, it could be a wake-up call, or you're shocking you out of your complacency if you see it in that spiritual sense. Maybe it has it'll have some good for us, even though that a lot of people have died and have faced hardship. At the same time, maybe spiritually, in terms of the Dhamma, we can wake up a bit from a lockdown and learn more about ourselves and about life. Just as the Buddha, when he finally realized he was too complacent with all the nice food and the comforts and the pleasures of the palace, he finally went outside the walls of the palace, much to his father's horror. That the horror of his father is only the horror in our own mind, saying, maybe all my pleasures aren't really that good. They're only pretty flimsy, fragile kind of pleasures. That horror that doesn't really want to own up to the truth or admit the truth. That's what the Buddha was dealing with, both in his father and maybe in himself as well. But he was willing to go out, take one step outside the palace and look more deeply at things. And straight away he saw, old age, sickness and death everywhere, because it's normal. But when you're looking at it with fresh eyes, coming out of lockdown, and you realize, other people have also been in lockdown suffering, other people have been getting ill, getting older. Today people came to the monastery, some of them haven't seen me for 8 months, and they said, you're looking older. But they're kind of trying to say it politely. 8 months, if you haven't seen someone for 8 months, they'll look older, maybe more grey hairs, more wrinkles. That's what lockdown does to us. You're sitting there in your little kind of insulated lockdown cabin, place, room, and then you come out and suddenly you realize, the world is changing, people are getting older, some people have died, some people have passed away. That's the reality of our existence. And it can be a shock when you face it, haven't thought about it, haven't noticed it for a while, and you face it, it can be quite shocking and wake you up. Just like the Buddha coming out of the palace, seeing society as it is from this place of, seeing it with new eyes, fresh eyes, saying, people getting sick, people dying, getting old people, and some of the sufferings of life. It's a bit like coming out of lockdown and reassessing, looking at life and what's really important, what's valuable to us as human beings. And the most important thing you might realize is our practice of the path. Even though we still have to go to work, look after families, engage with the world, of course, but learning to bring the Buddhist path into that engagement, maintaining that practice of generosity, or the attitude of generosity, whether we're in the temple or we're at work or we're at home, trying to maintain the precepts, develop that sense of personal commitment to harmlessness, mindfulness, practicing carefulness with our speech, our actions in daily life, whether we're in the temple or we're in the monastery or in the workplace or at home. And then developing these qualities we're developing through meditation wherever we are through the day, whether we're at work, we're at home, we're traveling, we're in a monastery, practicing mindfulness, maintaining wholesome states of mind and abandoning the more unskillful states of mind that pop into our head, reflecting on the truth, seeing the real peace and happiness lies within our own hearts. That's where we can find more lasting peace, rather than always going to the sort of easier sensual happiness of good food, good friends, nice clothes, nice entertainments and things on a screen to watch, all of those things which may be part of our life, but developing a more skillful attitude to realize that that's not the goal of our life or the goal of our practice. The goal of our practice is to develop the higher happiness of a peaceful mind, developing this path, developing that understanding. And sometimes we have to wake up to the truth, and it can be a little bit shocking or sobering. You may never have been drunk in your life, but you can probably imagine if someone's really drunk and they just don't know what they're saying, what's going on, and then they sober up from that state of intoxication and they suddenly realize they're back with reality, seeing the truth of things. That sobering, waking up feeling or the shock of it is part of our spiritual awakening. We have sometimes to look quite closely at the way things are and admit, life is uncertain, getting older every day, don't know how long I've got, how much time I've got. My mind is still subject to stress and suffering sometimes. I should practice more. But having reflected like that and woken up, the Buddha himself then saw the samana, the monk walking through the village, and it brought up that reflection. I really need to practice more. That's the arising of faith, pasada, what we call pasada, the clarity and the brightness of mind and the happiness knowing that there is a way out of suffering, which is what leads on from the sense of what we call samvega, this sobering up or the spiritual shock where we see the nature of things as they truly are, but then leading on from that we have the joy of, but there's a way out of this, there is a way out. It's the Buddha seeing the samana, or the monk walking through the village. For us it's coming to the Dhamma, coming to listen to a talk, going to a retreat, putting the Dhamma into daily life, whether it's just practicing some kindness and generosity with the people around you, consciously affirming your commitment to keep the 5 precepts every day, bringing up states of mindfulness and clarity through your day, at work, at home, wherever. This is like coming to the Dhamma, seeing the samana, seeing the path out of suffering. The more effort we put into that in our daily life, the happier we'll be. Even if we're not yet fully free from suffering, at least we can see there is a path, there's a way out, there's hope. And that's the brightness that comes when you have faith or conviction in the Buddha and his teachings arise. So if you are stuck in your practice, you've been doing your meditation and you finish your meditation and you think, but now my mind's all over the place and the greed or the anger or the worries are flooding back, what shall I do? Come back and remind yourself of the Buddha and what he taught. Over and over again we can do that. We call it Buddhanusati, Dhammanusati, Sanghanusati. Mindfully recollecting the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. Every day we can do that, which is why we have these sessions of chanting, meditation, listening to the Dhamma, practicing meditation. You're constantly coming back to recollect Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. That's like bringing your mind to see the Dhamma and the path out of suffering every day. So it brightens our mind, even when we're facing difficulties of illness, aging, other people not liking us, problems at work, getting tired, running a family, being responsible for other people, whatever it is that you're facing in your life. Where you get your strength, your hope, and the various wholesome, skillful qualities of mind, coming back to the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, reflecting on that over and over again, you'll never be disappointed. As monks, the Buddha said, when you're in the forest on your own, it's miserable, there's disease, wild animals, you're lonely, it's cold, wet, whatever. Always, if you're stuck, don't know what to do, think of the Buddha. Recite the Buddha's name, recollect the Buddha, become mindful of the Buddha, and it will give you a pathway out of suffering. It's like the nourishing of the seed. The seed is the inspiration to practice, and you recollect the Buddha, and other good things come out of that. You bow to the Buddha, it brings up very wholesome states of mind, sense of respect, reverence, mindfulness, compassion. You recollect the Buddha mentally, you bow to the Buddha, you chant verses, suttas or recitations of the Buddha's teachings. You're bringing your mind to know the Buddha, see the Buddha, recollect the Buddha. It always nourishes further good qualities. One thing leads to another, leads you out of your suffering, if only temporarily. But if we keep practicing that, good things will come. So maybe for tonight, I'll end the talk there and just encourage you to keep recollecting Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha through your practice every day. And I hope that this will be a cause for you to find peace and happiness.